All right, I don't know what time it is on your clock, but I know what I'm getting ready for. It is time for the Professional CISO Podcast with David Malaco.
Welcome, one and all, to the Professional CISO Podcast. I'm your host, David Malaco. This show is an exploration of the topics necessary to transform the CISO role into that of a professional. All right, gang, today we have an interview with a security leader in the technology consulting and services space. His roots are in physical security, security operations, and cybersecurity leadership. And there's some consulting in there as well, which, we all got to do that from time to time. All right, some notable things about our guest today. As a Marine, which,
Semper Fi.
Hoorah, Semper Fi. He led teams that provided physical security for the president's helicopter, HMX-1, as well as extended executive protection for 2 presidents.
That's right.
He also enjoys truck off-roading in his Raptor. I hear like 4 feet of...
Gotta get some air.
Gotta get some air. It's his adrenaline outlet, which obviously we all have to have our outlet.
We all have to have an outlet.
Absolutely. All right, so before we begin, let's talk a little bit. I want you to get out there and check out the Innovation Series. So this is a new series in a series that we started, and it's really to take a deep dive into the innovation that's out there today in our landscape and in cybersecurity landscape. So for CISO and practitioners, really, this is a way you can stay up to date without kind of getting stuck in those sales cycles. You can really understand what the nuances and complexities are around some of this innovation coming out. And for cyber startups and larger companies that are actually innovating, get your value proposition out there to the decision makers, right? So CISOs, high-level practitioners, as well as a lot of others, listen to this podcast, watch this podcast. It's a way to get that message out there. So encourage you to get involved in the Innovation Series no matter what side of the equation you're on. And then also, finally, please follow, like, and share. It's the best way to make sure that we continue to bring this great product to you. Hit that follow button on Spotify and Apple. Hit that subscribe button on YouTube, which we've had a lot of folks do here recently. Very happy with that. Thank you very much. Follow us on LinkedIn. We're always posting content and more to come because we're putting some resources behind this and really getting the socials out there as well. So share us with a friend or colleague. You like what you're hearing? You like what you're seeing? Hey, drop that link to somebody. Let them know. All right, so now let's talk about being a professional CISO. In today's episode, our guest is Joey Rachid. Joey.
Hey.
All right, so currently, Chief Information Security Officer at UST.
Correct.
Let's say the largest consulting and services company that no one's ever heard of. I kid. I kid. No, until Joey got this job, I think I had kind of maybe tangentially heard of them. And then now they're...
Know all about them.
They're huge.
Yes, we are.
Love it. And then held positions at the U.S. Marine Corps, of course, as we talked about. CGI, PwC, The Standard, and Vroom. That's not all, but those are kind of the main highlights over his career.
Correct.
A lot of leadership in there,
yes.
Which obviously, between our Marine Corps backgrounds and your passion, we're going to talk a lot about that today as well.
Great.
Please welcome Joey Rachid.
Yeah, thanks. Thanks for having me.
Yeah.
Applause.
I need the background. All right, so no stranger to the podcast, to the show. Definitely want to give you an opportunity. I always it's the human story, right?
Yes.
It's the where, when, what age, single digit Joey, teenage Joey, where did you get your first run in with technology? Where did it kind of percolate into your consciousness? And then kind of talk me through from that point up through to today.
Yeah, that's an interesting question. Reflecting on it, the first exposure to technology for me was when I was in a grunge band in high school, and we wanted to start recording our sessions. And so I went to Guitar Center. Yes, Guitar Center was around in the 80s, and went and bought a mixing device that was kind of up and coming, and just wanted to learn about how this worked. It was digital, right? And so that was really my first exposure to technology, and then that got me to, well, how does this work? I didn't really get into the programming or coding as a kid because, again, I was in a grunge band. You wouldn't believe it, but I had long hair and just loved playing guitar and singing. But then when I got out of high school, went into the Marine Corps, I got assigned an additional duty, right? Voluntold to be our department. We called it an ISO back then. I think it was a information systems officer. So I was the one that was in charge of making sure all the officers' mouse would work. And at those days, you just unplug it and plug it back in, right? Because it wasn't wireless.
PS2.
But, yeah, exactly. But then that's when I started to really get into computers and how they work in an environment, in a business or in an operation, and then leveraging programs like Excel and Access Database to support our presidential missions and operations and make those more effective, and then actually develop like an inventory system for us in the security department for HMX1, and just continue to learn and grow. And from there, I got lucky getting into cybersecurity. So after my 4 years in the Marine Corps, I had some colleagues who had joined Northrop Grumman, and obviously we were living in the Washington, D.C. area. And I was looking to get out, looking for a job. They said, hey, you understand technology. You have a security clearance. If you're willing to do weekend nights on the Security Operations Center floor, we'll teach you the rest. Wow. And that would never happen today, right? Because the cybersecurity market today is just so competitive. But back then, they were begging people to come into cyber. And so that's 24 years ago, in the early, by 2002, 22 years ago. So math, can't do math. Marine can't do math.
Math for Marines, gotcha.
So then, from there, it's been an interesting ride.
So talk to me a little bit about the rise, right? Because you've been in executive cybersecurity leadership for quite a while.
Yes.
And for several,
for about a decade.
Yeah, but with multiple organizations. So talk me through that rise. How did that flip come about to where you realized that you'd made it to that level and then obviously continue to grow?
Yeah, I think, getting from being a SOC analyst to then going to threat intelligence and then leading teams and then just being given the opportunity to lead. I think that's something that we always need to remember as leaders, is that someone gave us a shot without having all the skills necessary, and they took a shot and they trained us and they developed us. Right. And so just rose through the ranks. My first real exposure into leadership was when I moved back to Texas after being gone for several years, after being in the military and going to Austin and helping develop and lead the security program for the Texas State Data Center, which at that time Northrop Grumman was the prime contractor for.
Gotcha.
And then that's where I got into leadership and starting to lead teams, leading programs, leading initiatives. And then from there, I bounced back and forth between DC and Texas and Oregon and different places to get that exposure, to get those leadership positions. My family has been flexible in the fact that we know that sometimes the opportunities aren't always where we live right now. Right. So sometimes we got to move around to support my career aspirations and also just kind of see the country. Right. And I've had the privilege of serving as a CISO for 3 times now, in my 3rd role now, and have also done PwC consulting for 3.5 years. And that was, for anyone considering consulting, it's like dog years in consulting. 1 year in consulting is literally like 6 years of learning. And so, because you get exposed to so many challenges, so many clients, so many different things, that it really exponentially increases your learning, which I think has prepared me even more for leadership opportunities and learning different types of teams and different types of companies and environments.
That's exactly what I tell people as well. Is like when I was consulting, it was dog years for sure.
Yeah, it literally is.
You were on the fast track for sure as far as the intake and ingestion of real world scenarios.
Yes. Yeah. And clients don't bring you in as a consultant to solve simple stuff. Right. They bring Complex. You in, and especially in the Big Four realm, because Big Four isn't cheap typically. Right. They bring you in to solve the hard stuff, the really challenging things. And there's some really challenging things that I had no exposure to, but you learn quick.
Absolutely. So I want to drill in a little bit on something that you said, which is about the development of people, right? Mm-hmm. Do we have a problem now, or let's call it an opportunity? Can we swing the pendulum? Because I feel like we do. I want to hear your opinion. Are we developing people the way that we maybe have in the past and to the quality that we have in the past? Do we need to, as senior leaders, really take more of a time, effort, and intentionality in doing that?
Yes.
What are your thoughts on that?
So I see this as the difference between building a team and buying a team. And so what I mean by that, when you build a team, I think you do what you and I are familiar with from our military careers, is you bring people with great aptitude and values, and you teach them the skills to be successful in those roles. I mean, we weren't born Marines, right? No. Well, at least I wasn't. Maybe you were.
No, I wasn't.
And so,
Forged, man.
Went to the Marine Corps, met some basic standards, which weren't very high, right? And then we were developed into Marines. Yes. I see it's the same way as building a cybersecurity team. You find people with that right aptitude, those right values, and then you depending on the roles, but I like to try to bring people in at the bottom and bring their career up and so forth, versus this model of buying your team, meaning that you want people to come in with all the skills, all the abilities, and be able to just hit the ground running day one. Now, there are certain areas where you need that, right?
Right.
But I think there has been a shift with this mentality of leadership of buy versus build. And I think we need to have a better mix of both. I think right now there's a lot of leaning towards, I just want to buy it. I just want people to come in and hit the ground sprinting and solve all my problems. And it's like, well, that's not sustainable. Right? I think you have to have a mix of both and bring people in at the bottom and train them and being willing to shepherd them in their career. And then for some of those positions, I mean, listen, UST hired me as a CISO. They brought me out from the outside. And so there is a case for buying sometimes that talent into the company, right? But we need a better balance, I think. How about you?
I agree. I think it's a case where we have the opportunity. I think we're reaping the whirlwind of what we've done in the past, which is we're finding that we have this challenge around talent, but it's because we're not developing people and we're expecting people to develop themselves, and by that nature you're not going to get as high a quality. I know I had multiple mentors in my career through just technology and security that brought me along and taught me those things, and it's so much more well-rounded than what I found in a book.
Yes.
Right, or in a certification exam.
Exactly.
Or things like that. And I think hopefully people are seeing this and we get back to being able to continue to develop people. Don't get me wrong. I think if you have a big problem and you need that stud or studette to come in and just knock it out of the park and already have, yes, I think you have to do that. But I think we as a industry have kind of defaulted to that.
Yeah, I think the main thing, David, is we need to remember how we got into the field.
Right.
And it resonates with me because, again, like I said, I had no security experience. Someone took a chance on me, said, hey, we will train you as long as you're willing to work weekend nights. Apparently no one wanted to work weekend nights, but I did, and it worked out. And sometimes the other side has to sacrifice a little bit too to realize that, I'm not going to get out of college making, $200,000 day one and being the senior analyst. There has to be reasonable expectations too as well.
Agreed. Yeah. Okay, shift a little bit. Want to talk about professionalizing the role, right?
Yes.
So it's kind of the standard question I ask everybody, and the reason I ask a standard question is because everybody tends to have a different answer. I'm not going to say the old trope again about 5 CISOs, 6 different opinions, but in the end, we don't have a lot of alignment on this. And think of the professional as just kind of a notional idea. Do we need to get better, right? Professionalize the role, become more like a standard executive more than a. So what are your thoughts on that? Do we need to professionalize the role? If not, why? If so, what does that mean to you?
Well, I mean, a little bit about my answer on this. Of course, it's yes. And I'll tell you a little bit of just a short story.
Sure.
So
we're all about stories.
About 3 years ago, when I was living in Oregon, I was on my way from Oregon to Moab to do some of that off-roading.
Yeah.
And then on my way back, I stopped at a very good friend and CISO in the industry, living in Park City, Utah, living the life. And I asked him on his, at this resort, I forget what it was. It's like, what do I need to do to continue rising in the ranks as a CISO? Maybe be a Fortune 100, Fortune 10 CISO. And he told me, Joey, we have to professionalize our profession. The CISO role is becoming a business executive. Go get your MBA. I was like, my MBA? Like, why would I want to do that? He goes, because if you have it and people want it, it's better to have it and not need it than need it and not have it. And you'll be ahead of the pack, per se. But I didn't quite connect the dots at the time. Now being halfway through my MBA, I fully get it. Because the ability for me to have conversations with executives in the boardroom, at executive leadership summits and things like that, has changed so much. not only do I understand the conversations that are being had with regards to finance, the different metrics, the different numbers, why decisions are made when they're made and how, but you understand the why behind the what. And it's so important because we have to realize as CISOs, we're there to support the business, right? We're there to protect and minimize risk, and risk ultimately impacts the top line and the bottom line, right? Revenue and expense. And we're trying to increase or protect revenue and minimize the impact to expense, whether it be our own cost center or even just the reputational damage of cost of a breach and things like that. So I fully think that we need to show ourselves that we are doing what we need to do to become business executives and professionals and speak the language of the business. Because I don't know about you, David, but I don't think we can expect the business to understand our language.
I agree.
Unless you're in a cybersecurity company,
right,
which even then I think is still, at the end of the day, is about making money and making profit. You still need to understand the language of the business, and that's primarily finance and risk.
Well, I even go to the point of saying, okay, we talked about Spain earlier, right? I don't speak Spanish.
Exactly.
If you parachuted me into Spain, I would be struggling for a while, right? Where's the bathroom? I don't know how to get a beer, whatever that looks. Well, maybe I can get a beer, but that's a different story. But turn that around and say, if I learned the language before I went to where I was going and what I was dealing with, instead of saying, no, you all have to learn English, right?
Exactly.
So in the C-suite, everybody speaks business,
exactly,
but we don't.
Exactly.
Many of us don't, let's say that, right? And then turn that around and say, it's easier for me to learn the business language and learn the nuance around the business than it is to try to get everybody to learn it about, let me be that 100%. My expertise and let me be the translator. 100%.
I really like that analogy that you use about going to a foreign country and expecting them to meet you where you're at versus like you're in their world, right. You're in their culture. You need to meet them where they're at. And so that's exactly us. We're in the business. We need to understand the business language and speak in that regard. So yeah, there was another point, but I think I just forgot it. So.
You're okay. So I'm gonna push you into, since you brought up the MBA, I already had it on the list for later, but I want to talk about it now then. Would you say if you were a senior practitioner bucking to be a CISO, you need to go out and get your MBA?
Listen, here's an MBA answer.
And that's not a trap.
Here's an MBA answer. It depends.
That's a lawyer answer, sir.
It's also MBA, I've learned. It really does depend. Listen, you don't have to go get an MBA to learn what I've learned. You can read business books. You can listen to a podcast which I was recently introduced to, the Founders Podcast.
Oh, yeah, I've heard of that.
Which talks about successful founders of companies and the drive and the things that they did. And it talks a lot about business. You don't have to invest that amount of time or money, but I do think you need to do something to understand the business language, which is primarily finance, understand different tried and true methodologies for business leadership. And what do I mean by tried and true? So the nice thing about academia is that they teach you things that work by and large in any scenario in business, right? And so these are things that are academically researched, they're solid foundational principles, some of them are 100 years old, right? The thing that I caution is reading the book about the one person story and how they were successful in a very unique situation. Well, that's not gonna work everywhere, right? Some leadership principles, some of it's luck, a lot of it's luck. Some of it was unique to the area that that person was leading or the time that they were leading. So the nice thing about business school and books and things that teach tried and true is that it's repeatable no matter the business, no matter the scenario or what have you. It's things that you can anchor yourself to and build a good foundation. Just learning that there are ways to make decision making and not just off the cuff. And if you can show that to your leadership, it's like, wow, okay, let's go forward because you've done this methodology to show that you've thought about this and used a methodology that is tried and true. Understanding risk and how to do risk modeling is really beneficial, especially in our world where we're trying to present the value of cybersecurity and what is the alternative of not doing it and what's the impact. These things, and you can communicate, are really beneficial. And the thing that I now remember that I forgot a minute ago is I also look at the benefit of an MBA beyond the role of a CISO. And what do I mean by that? I do believe that I, in some regard, got my current role at UST because my supervisor also has an MBA, and I think he recognizes the value that that brings to the business. But when I was interviewing, I explained that I might not always want to just be a CISO.
Right.
I might want to come to the company, do a bang-up job, and do a great job in building the program and helping minimize risk and manage risk, but maybe I want to pivot into something else. And so that enables us as CISOs to not have this 18-month to 2-year career trajectory at a company when we get bored and then the only way up is actually out.
Right.
Because this positions yourself to actually broaden your horizons and maybe lead something else in the business. So that's also the way I look at it. It's kind of a way for me to maybe build my career, maybe even outside of security.
Love it.
Not that I want to necessarily do that, but
Understood.
it gives options, right?
But it's not unprecedented at UST, from what I understand. I think their former CISO now actually is involved with one of their.
As the CEO of one of our subsidiaries.
Yeah, exactly. So not unprecedented.
It's not.
Yeah. So I like that. That's
So
good.
yeah, I mean, it enables you to just become more marketable, I think.
Right. Okay. So moving on a little bit to kind of wrap up the professionalization. Where are we headed? Where is this role headed? Where does it need to head? What's for Joey Rachid? What's the future? Not just you particularly, but what is the future of our role?
I think you mentioned it, and that's the title of this podcast, right? It's the Professional CISO, right? We need to professionalize. We need to show that we have some standardization with the way that we approach things, and that we need to be seen in the boardroom and in our executive circles as peers.
Okay, so the Venmo is on its way. I'm just saying. Couldn't have had
Thank
it better.
you.
I'm going to take that
Thank you.
clip right there for sure. No, I agree with you. The whole premise of this thing, right, is we have to define it, and I think we're getting there. And I think there's people working to help with that, and I think we have better awareness than we ever have had before. I feel like we as a role as kind of that awkward teenager.
Yes.
Right? We're trying to find our way, who we are, get our identity, and but we're also trying to do it across, I don't know, 5,000 people or 8,000 people or however many there of us there are. So anyway, that's kind of my take on it. What are your thoughts?
No, I mean, I don't know if I have much else to add.
Okay.
Just leverage your time and abilities to just learn the other things that are in business, to be seen as and be able to engage in things that are outside of just security. Because if you can show that you can help solve a problem that's more than just in the world of information security or technology, that's how you build rapport. Right. That's how you build character and competence within your organization, which is all about what leadership is about, right? Is that a good segue?
Seriously, it's like I pay you or something. So the next thing we're going to talk about is leading teams and organizational development. So this one gets a little, I want to kind of set the stage for everybody, and I'm going to allow you to kind of go. So when we talk about leading teams and organizational development, we're going to talk through cyber specific, and then how that's a little bit different from the typical, right? Because there's this compare contrast. And then when we talk about org design versus the management, right? And then leadership, talk about character and competence. And so I'll make sure that we stay on, in that path. But
guide me through, because I have limited brain, bandwidth in my brain here.
Understood. I have notes, so
where's my notes?
I'm cheating. All right, so let's talk leadership first.
Yes.
So character and competence. Talk me through your thoughts around leadership.
Yeah. I think character and competence equal trust.
Interesting.
And I think sometimes when we think about trust, we only think about the character part. Like, do I trust this person in a sense of, do I trust them with $20 or do I trust them with something valuable? And that's, the character piece. But the competence piece is, do you complete your assignments or tasks on time? I had a professor say, and I love this, it's what is your say-do percentage ratio? Is what you say also what you do? Because if you say you're going to do 10 things and you deliver one, that's really eroding at your trust, which is your competence. And we all know there's sometimes in that company you say, I just don't trust that person to get that project done. And that's the competence part, whether it's you're dependable or reliable, or whether or not you have the skills to do it, right? But it all goes up to trust. And so I think, as you know, been around the block for a while, relationships are all about trust.
Yep.
And when you think about the relationships that you have, you think about people that you have like good character, that you know that you would want to be by your side and you'd stand up for, or that are competent, like know what they're doing. I showed up to this podcast on time. You wouldn't have invited me if
You showed up early, sir.
Actually, yes, I did.
Okay.
20 minutes.
Just want to make sure we were clear on that.
But if you had felt that like, oh, he's always late, like you probably wouldn't have invited me.
Probably
because
not.
there's a lack of trust, which again, so I think as leaders, we have to recognize that you have to build your trust, because that builds the money in the bank of your social capital in your company. And then you need to use that capital wisely when you're advocating for certain projects or initiatives. And you have to deliver. I think leaders need to realize that you have to, my dad used to always say this, right, is choose your battles wisely, right? And so when you're in a CISO role, you have to choose those battles wisely. Yeah. Sometimes, as my father always said, and I think we learned in the Marines, is sometimes you got to lose the battle to win the war.
Yep.
And so that is very true in business, because business, once you're at our level, is all about politics. You have to realize that you are now a part of the company politics, and you have to be in that, and you have to understand how to navigate those relationships and those waters, and that's where leadership comes in. So I'll pause there because I said a lot.
All right, so moving on to org design.
Yes.
Okay, so design versus management.
Yes.
Talk me
and
through.
I love this.
Talk me through. I know you do.
I love this so much, and I didn't recognize until, and this is a thing that I learned during my MBA, and one of our professors really helped me learn this, and it's a thing that I've held for a very long time, that your organizational design is paramount to success. If you are a great leader, but you have an organizational design that doesn't work, you will not succeed. You will not be the best that you can be. And not to, that's an Army term, right?
Yeah, I know.
We can cut that out. So here's an analogy, right? If you take the world's best race car driver and you put him in a race car that has 4 different size tires, a loose steering wheel, gears that don't shift well, and so forth, will that race car driver be able to get that race car around the track as fast as anyone else? No, they won't. They'll get it around, but they'll be last. It's kind of the same thing with leadership. If you put the best leader in an organization that is just doesn't make any sense, doesn't have any business alignment or go-to-market strategy alignment, doesn't have clear mission, vision, and values, and so that people understand that why they're working on is X and X leads to Y, and that then provides me fulfillment, like you're not going to be very successful. And it is just a fact of org design. That's why it's so important. That's why you also see so many organizations redesign or reorg so often, especially when a strategy changes, because org design really matters as to how the business is successful.
How do we do it then? So what are the things we need to think about, right? I'm coming in, like, let's say you're like, right, and not an example, but new CISO coming in. How do I, look at my organization to see if it is aligned, right? And then what do I do to make sure that it is? Yeah.
So in every single one of my 3 CISO roles that I've had, I've come in, you do your 90-day assessment, strengths, opportunities, and you look at the org design. Every single one, I've done a reorg. And it's because the organization was not aligned with the mission that they were trying to accomplish. And that mission changes depending on the maturity of the program or where the company is trying to head. Because remember, security is there to reduce or manage risk or enable the business. And so you have to look at what is the strategic objective of the business, and then that defines your priorities as far as what are you going to mature first, what are you going to try to build first or second or wherever you're at in your life cycle. So you have to look at what are those key objectives. Maybe you look at what are your key risks and how do you align your team towards addressing those key risks. Different market segments have different types of key risks, different threat actors, different things that threat actors are after, and so you align that team towards the mission, the vision, and then allow them to see the values and see the purpose of their objectives, right? So if you have this roadmap, you have these risks that you've identified, and now you have a team that is positioned to deliver those key core competencies, and then they can see how their contributions directly align. That's key right there,
right?
Because people want to see that sense of feel that sense of purpose, and I resonate with that because starting as a young Marine, you clearly know how you're in the pecking order of the org. You know what your role is and why it matters and how it lines up to the thing that you're doing, and that's something that we all innately want. Everyone wants to feel a sense of purpose in what they do. So,
love it. Well, the time has come.
Okay.
So, 10 questions with Joey Rachid.
All right, 10
All
questions.
right. What's your favorite word?
My favorite word. It's probably not appropriate for a podcast.
It's okay. There's more questions like that anyway. So, and you can rhymes with.
Right, no, I mean, that's a great question. I don't know what my favorite word is. I don't. I like to say yada yada a lot.
Okay, like that. What's your least favorite word?
My least favorite word is when someone speaks in, like they say, we will get it done. We. Like,
the royal we?
Who's we? Is it like
I'm talking to you.
We used to say in the Marine Corps, like, is there a mouse in your pocket?
Yeah.
Like, who's we? Like, are you going to get it done?
Right.
Or are you, like, who's
No,
we? But so we would be like I
love it.
No.
What area of your work do you find most interesting?
I love leadership. Mm-hmm. So I say that I am first and foremost a people and organizational leader. I just happen to have done it in security for the past 20 some odd years.
What area of your work is the most challenging for you?
The thing that's most challenging for me is I'm a very passionate person, and so I have to try to control my passion so it doesn't seem too, what's the right word, too
forward.
Overwhelming. Yes, and that is maybe a weakness of mine that I'm working on, and I continually work on.
Okay.
Because I do care about what we work on, and I truly want to see progress and things happen.
I would rather have somebody that I have to pull back a little bit than I have to push forward.
Yes.
So just a thought there. What sound or noise do you love?
I love music.
Specific kind?
Just live music.
Love it.
It can be almost any kind as long as it's good.
What sound or noise do you hate?
Kids probably screaming.
Yeah.
And I have 2 kids, so it's what it is.
And then suddenly the drill instructor voice comes in and.
No, I mean, it's just I have to you have to just. Thankfully, my kids are no longer babies. They're not grown like yours, but 11 and 9, and I would be remiss if I didn't say their names, Corley and Cademan.
Love it.
Because they would love to hear their name on a podcast. So.
And your wife's name?
Grace.
There you go. Call everybody out at the same time.
Exactly.
What's your favorite curse word? Let's follow that up with a great question. What's your favorite curse word?
Oh, my favorite curse word is probably like damn it. Yeah.
What profession other than your own would you like to attempt?
I would love to be a chief operations officer. It's just
foreshadowing there.
If I were ever given the opportunity, yes. I love operations. It's the way my mind thinks.
Mm-hmm.
I think as former military, we tend to think operationally.
We do.
I mean, that's why I went to security operations, because that's the way my mind thinks. I can sometimes anticipate things, see around the corner, and I can just logically think things out. But I also love to make sure, as we would say, like all the trains are leaving and departing the station on time, that the left hand knows what the right hand is doing and vice versa. And really a COO is the glue and the energy that just makes everything happen within a company. And I would love an opportunity like that someday.
What profession would you not like to do? No indictment. It's just a personal preference.
No, like right now with 105-degree heat out, I probably wouldn't want to work outside right now.
Not be a roofer.
No, yeah, definitely not want to be a roofer.
All right, final question of 10 questions with Joey Rachid. If heaven exists, what would you like to hear your God say when you arrive at the pearly gates?
Job well done. Yeah.
Love it.
Yeah.
Joey Rachid, everybody.
Thank you.
Thank
Appreciate
you for
it.
coming on. Appreciate it, man.
Yeah. It's excellent.
Well, in this episode, we covered a lot. So leadership, number one, obviously covered professionalizing the role, covered, is that MBA critical? Or is it the business acumen, learning the business acumen, where that might fit into one of your development plans? And then obviously we talked about organizational design. In the end, I renew the call. Colleagues and friends, we must professionalize the role of CISO. In the meantime, I wish you health, happiness, and success on your journey in becoming the professional CISO. Let's do this.
We're professionalizing the CISO role, so please subscribe to the Professional CISO podcast.